All praises, honor, and glory be to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Salutations to the Akia, called into the truth. Peace and blessings to the elect of the house of Israel, scattered across the four corners of the earth. Salutations and greetings. Alright, today I want to go into actually St. Matthew, the 12th chapter and the 50th verse, concerning the Father's will. I'm going to read the whole, the top to give context, but the key point is the 50th verse of St. Matthew, the 12th chapter. But without further ado, let's begin the lesson. And St. Matthew 12 and 46. While he yet talked to the people, behold, his mother and his brethren stood without, desiring to speak with him. Then one said unto him, Behold, thy mother and thy brethren stand without, desiring to speak with thee. But he answered and said unto him that told him, Who is my mother, and who are my brethren? And he stretched forth his hand toward his disciples, and said, Behold my mother and my brethren. 50th verse, St. Matthew the 12th chapter. For whosoever shall do the will of my Father which is in heaven, the same is my brother and sister and mother. Alright? Now this concerning the will of the Father. How do we become Yahweh Shai's brother? It's written in red. That's why I call it the red letters. And whenever you see it's written in red, that's Yahweh Shai speaking. Alright? How do we obtain to be his brother? How do we become his sister or his mother? How do we do the will of the Father? Well, the scriptures will explain itself. And let's go to Psalms 40 and 8. Psalms 40 and 8. And it reads in Psalms 40 and 8, I delight to do thy will, O my God. I'm going to say it verbatim. Yea, thy law is within my heart. So as we see here, we only can do his will if his law is within our hearts. We have to have the law in our heart to do his will. I delight to do thy will, O my power. Thy law is within my heart, right? I'm saying the law is the will, but you have to have the law in your heart to commit to do his will. And we'll further explain. Let's go to St. Matthew, the 22nd verse. And this is St. Matthew 22. And I'll begin at 36. And it reads, St. Matthew 22 and 36. Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Yahweh Shai said unto him, Thou shalt love thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. St. Matthew 22 and 40. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. So as we see, you must have the law in your heart. These two commandments must be in your heart, even to commit yourself to doing the will of the Father, becoming the brother of Yahweh Shai, the sister or the mother. Alright? And now we come to the fact. Let's see what is the will. And this is 1 Thessalonians 4 and 3. For this is the will of God, even your sanctification, that ye shall abstain from fornication. Alright, let's go into this word, sanctification. It says consecration, purification, the effect of consecration, sanctification of heart and life. Properly, purification, that is the state, purity, concretely, by Hebrewism, a purifier. Holiness, sanctification, which really goes into you being separate. Holy meaning separate, to be set apart, away from the whole. Was not our forefathers separated? Was not Abraham separate? Didn't he tell him to get up from around his people, therefore he could deal with him? So basically he said, separate yourself from the world, even your sanctification. And it says right here, it's concerning the topic of conversation, 1 Thessalonians 4 and 3. For this is the will of God, even your sanctification, that ye be separate, that ye should abstain from fornication. And he is not talking about physically you lying down with a woman that is taken, or to the sisters who are listening, you lying down with a man other than your husband. He's not talking about that. We read in context, he's talking about sanctification, you being pure. We've got a definition. It's G38 as being pure. It's not talking about anything on a carnal level. It's talking about you committing fornication as believing in other philosophies. And let's get a precept instead of me talking. Let's get a precept. I use a real common one. First Corinthians 10 chapter and the 21st verse. All right. And it reads, 1 Corinthians 10 and 21. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. You cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and of the table of devils. Basically, that's what he's saying. Abstain from fornication. Be ye sanctified in Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah. That's what he's saying. Let me pull some supporting scriptures, but that is the will of the Father. All right? And that's how we become Yahweh Shah, brother, sister, and mother, if he will. If he will, because he have to give you the will. Let's get some supportive scriptures. Let's go to St. John 9, 31. And it's a beautiful parable about the blind man who was made to see by the mercy and grace of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah. But just to the point, St. John 9 and 31. Now we know that the power heareth not sinners, but if any man be a worshipper of the power and doeth his will, even your sanctification, him he heareth. Okay? You be separate from the world. Don't be believing this philosophies. I was born as a testimony in this place. I was taught that that everything go around the sun. That the sun is the center of the universe. Well, the Lord opened up my eyes and my heart and taught me that the earth is the center of the universe. So things of that nature, just to give you an example, even your sanctification come from amongst them. You know, we play this thing, but we don't believe this thing. Keep your eyes single to do the will of the Father. Keep the law in your heart. St. Matthew, the 22nd chapter. We may read that one more again. But let's get some supporting scriptures of the topic of conversation. This 1 Peter 4 and 1. We'll begin at 1. For as much then as Mashiach has suffered for us in the flesh, Salah, 1 Peter 4 and 1. For as much then as Mashiach has suffered for us in the flesh, arm yourselves likewise with the same mind. But he that hath suffered in the flesh hath ceased from sin, that he no longer should live the rest of his time in the flesh to the lust of men, but to the will of God. For the time past of our life may suffice us to have wrought the will of the Gentiles, when we walked in lasciviousness, lust, excess of wine, revelings, banquetings, and abominable idolatries. Okay? That was the will of the Gentiles. We didn't follow the will of the Father, the will of God. That's what we are speaking of, the will of God. What is it? He's telling you, for the time of past, we have walked in the will of the Gentiles, which is of this flesh. Lasciviousness is actually excessive lust. You know, it's lust, but it's extreme lust, you know. Excessive wine. It's not talking about literal wine. There are precepts on this, but just to give you a real rundown, you could go check them for yourself. Don't believe me. Excessive wine is talking about philosophies. All right? Revelings and banquetings. That's basically really partying right there. And abominable idolatries. Okay? You worshiping money, the mark of the beast, is definitely idolatry. But just to give you some examples. But the will of the Father, as we have read in 1 Thessalonians, the 4th chapter and the 3rd verse, is even your sanctification. We have read the will of the Father. To do it, you have to have the law in your heart. Well, that's like I said, I was going to bring back up St. Matthew, the 22nd chapter, and show you how that how it is a precept unto 1 Thessalonians, because it says in St. Matthew, the 22nd chapter and the 36th verse, right here, I just get to the point. St. Matthew 22 and 37, Yahweh said unto him, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. So, as we see, it says in 1 Thessalonians 4 and 3, for this is the will of God, even your sanctification, that ye should abstain from fornication. That's it. Purified, totally about Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah. That's it. That is a great commandment, and second is like unto it. as I said, I'm going to bring out supporting scriptures. What's another supporting scripture? As far as the will of the Father and what it is, and how we obtain to become the brother and sister and mother of Yahushua, he who doeth the will of the Father. Let's go to Romans 12 and 2. Let's get right to the point. Romans 12 and 2. Salah. Romans 12 and 2. Romans 12 and 2. Romans 12 and 2. And it reads, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. By the renewing of your mind, one way, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God, even your sanctification. Holy. One of the definitions was holy. Purified. Be ye separate. Holy meaning separate. Let's get one more. Let's go to 1 John. The 2nd chapter. And let's get the 16th verse. And it reads. 1 John 2 and 16. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, and the lust of the eyes, and pride of life, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof. But he that doeth the will of the power abideth forever. The will being, for this is the will of God, even your sanctification. Even your sanctification. Let's get one more. Let's get one more. And I should close it out with this. Should I bring this one out? No. I mean, that's pretty much it. But there's so many more scriptures as far as concerning the will of the Father. But basically he's saying, for this is the will of the Father, even your sanctification. And it's accordingly in Psalms 40th chapter and 8th verse. His law has to be in your heart to do his will. And we know that his law is in St. Matthew, the 22nd chapter, where you love the paraphrasing, where you love the Most High with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind, which is your sanctification, because you put him first. You don't see nothing else past him. You know, basically, you separate from the world. Even your own self you don't put before him. Basically, that's the law. And the second is like unto it. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Can't go wrong, because every sin that a man commit in the Levitical law, for the most part, is against his neighbor. So it makes much sense. I just hope someone was edified today, and that we all strive to be the brother or a sister or a mother of Yahushua, and do the will of the Father, which is abstain from fornication, and even your sanctification. Shalom.